Warlord Keithvar stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Dominator's Edge, and felt that familiar tingle of satisfaction that came with absolute power. His forearms crossed behind his back, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the ship's artificial lights. He gazed through the massive viewport at the pathetic blue marble spinning lazily in the void ahead. Earth. What a joke! Sub-Commander Vel Thark, he barked, his voice carrying that perfect blend of authority and contempt that had crushed 17 civilizations before this one. Status report on the primitive colony ahead. Thark, a nervous creature whose species had learned the hard way what happened when you disappointed the hegemony, scuttled forward with his datapad clutched in trembling appendages. My lord, our long-range scans confirm initial intelligence reports. The inhabitants call themselves humans. They possess rudimentary chemical propulsion, primitive nuclear weapons, and their largest governmental structures barely control land masses smaller than our mining colonies. Keithvar's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. Nuclear weapons? How wonderfully quaint! I suppose they think splitting atoms makes them dangerous. He gestured toward the holographic display showing Earth's surface. Look at this mess, Vel Thark. They have divided themselves into nearly 200 separate tribal territories. They cannot even achieve basic planetary unity, and they expect to resist the hegemony. The massive war fleet stretched out behind the flagship like a metallic constellation of death. 300 vessels of various classifications, each one capable of glassing a continent, hung in perfect formation. The smallest frigate in Keithvar's armada possessed shielding technology that could deflect anything these humans might throw at them. Their weapons could punch through planetary crusts. Their soldiers were genetically enhanced killing machines bred for conquest. And the humans? The humans had what exactly? Sir, reported Commander Thesak from her tactical station, our intelligence drones have been monitoring their communications networks. They spend considerable time arguing among themselves about resource distribution, territorial boundaries, and something called social media platforms. Most of their military forces appear to be engaged in conflicts with each other rather than preparing for external threats. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Keithvar had conquered species that possessed faster-than-light travel before the humans had learned to make fire. He had brought low civilizations that had mastered genetic engineering while these creatures were still figuring out agriculture. The pattern was always the same. Show up with overwhelming force, demand surrender, glass one major population center as an example, and watch the rest fall into line like dominoes. Their largest military installations appear to be these structures they call bases, Vel Thark continued, his voice gaining confidence. However, sir, they are scattered across the planet with no unified command structure. Their most advanced aircraft achieve barely supersonic speeds, and their space presence consists of a few small orbital stations with no defensive capabilities whatsoever. The Warlord's confidence swelled like a tide. This would be over before lunch. The humans had not even detected his fleet yet, despite being close enough to Earth that their primitive telescopes should have spotted them weeks ago. Either they were blind, stupid, or both. Probably both. Excellent, he rumbled, savoring the moment. Deploy standard conquest protocol. I want their political leaders identified and isolated. Find me whoever speaks for the largest tribal territories. We will offer them the traditional choice. Kneel or burn. Thesak's fingers danced across her console. Sir, we are detecting multiple signals coming from their surface. They appear to be entertainment broadcasts. Something called movies and television shows. Many appear to feature fictional accounts of alien invasions. Now that was amusing. The humans had actually imagined this scenario and turned it into entertainment. How delightfully naive. No doubt their fictional accounts showed brave human heroes defeating impossible odds through clever tricks and inspiring speeches. Reality, as Keithvar knew from extensive experience, would be far less dramatic. Let them enjoy their fantasies while they can, he sneered. Reality tends to be much less accommodating to underdogs. The fleet began its final approach toward Earth. Weapons charging, shields at maximum, every system optimized for what would surely be the shortest conquest in hegemony history. After all, what could possibly go wrong when facing a species that had not even figured out basic interstellar travel? Keithvar settled into his command throne, already composing the victory dispatch he would send back to Hegemony Command. This would be a conquest so swift and decisive that it would become a case study in military academies across the galaxy. The humans, bless their primitive hearts, did not even know what was coming. The landing was, in Keithvar's opinion, a masterpiece of psychological warfare. His personal assault craft, the Subjugator, descended through Earth's atmosphere, trailing superheated plasma that lit up the sky like a second sun. The humans' primitive radar systems went haywire. Their communication networks buzzed with panic chatter. Their military forces scrambled like insects whose nest had been kicked. Exactly as planned. Keithvar had chosen his landing site with typical hegemony precision, a large military installation the humans called Peterson Space Force Base in something they referred to as Colorado. It housed what appeared to be their most advanced aerospace personnel, which meant it probably contained their smartest military minds. Crush the smartest ones first, and the rest would fold like cheap tents. The Subjugator touched down with a thunderous roar that shattered windows for kilometers around. Keithvar emerged from his craft in full ceremonial battle armor, flanked by 24 of his finest shock troopers. Each soldier stood 3 meters tall, bristling with energy weapons that could vaporize a human battalion. Their synchronized march toward the base's main building was designed to inspire terror and immediate capitulation. What he got instead was a single human female standing in the middle of the landing field, arms crossed, wearing what appeared to be a military uniform, and the most unimpressed expression he had ever encountered in 17 conquest campaigns. "Sub-Commander Thark," Keithvar said slowly, his translator broadcasting his words in the local language. "Are you seeing what I am seeing?" "Yes, my lord." One human female, apparently unarmed, displaying no signs of fear, terror, or appropriate reverence for our overwhelming superiority. The woman had dark hair pulled back in a severe style, skin weathered by sun and experience, and eyes that seemed to be measuring him the way a predator evaluates prey. Most disturbing of all, she appeared to be smiling. Not the terrified rictus of doomed resistance he was accustomed to. Genuine amusement. Keithvar approached her with a measured stride of absolute authority. His translator crackled to life as he delivered the traditional opening statement of Hegemony Conquest Protocol. "Primitive creature. I am Warlord Keithvar of the Galactic Hegemony. Your pathetic species has been chosen for absorption into our empire. You will identify your leaders immediately and arrange for the unconditional surrender of your planet. Resistance is futile. Compliance will be rewarded with swift integration. Defiance will result in the complete eradication of your civilization." The human female listened to this pronouncement with the sort of polite attention one might give to a weather report. When he finished, she tilted her head slightly and replied in a voice that carried across the landing field with surprising authority. "Captain Maya Torres, United States Space Force. And you know what, Keith? Can I call you Keith? That was a really impressive speech. Very dramatic. Did you practice that in front of a mirror, or do you just wing it every time you invade somebody?" Thark's jaw dropped. Literally. His mandibles separated and hung loose in shock. Several shock troopers shifted nervously, clearly unsure how to process this response. Keithvar felt something he had not experienced in decades of conquest. Confusion. You dare mock the hegemony?" "Oh, I'm not mocking the hegemony," Maya said, her smile widening. "I'm mocking you specifically. Big difference. See, we've been watching your fleet for weeks, Keith. Did you really think we missed 300 ships parking themselves in our outer solar system? We may be primitive, but we're not blind." Weeks. That was impossible. Their stealth technology was centuries ahead of anything these creatures possessed. "Impossible," Keithvar snarled. "Your detection capabilities are insufficient to spot a fleet of ships the size of small moons broadcasting on frequencies that our radio telescopes pick up like foghorns in a library," Maya interrupted. "Keith, buddy, your stealth tech works great against your own sensor technology. Against ours. You might as well have sent us an engraved invitation. This was not going according to plan. Not at all. Enough." Keithvar bellowed, his voice amplified by his armor speakers. "You will surrender now, or I will demonstrate the price of defiance." He gestured to his shock troopers, who raised their energy weapons in perfect synchronization. Maya Torres did not flinch, did not step back, did not even stop smiling. Instead, she reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out what appeared to be a small communication device. Torres to all units. Keith here just threatened to demonstrate something. I think it's time we demonstrated something right back. The response was immediate and utterly confusing. Every human structure within sight suddenly sprouted weapons. Not the primitive chemical projectile launchers they had expected, but energy weapons that looked suspiciously similar to hegemony technology. Worse, the energy signatures matched exactly. "How?" Vel Thark stammered. "Oh, that," Maya said casually. "Funny story about those intelligence drones you've been sending us. Turns out they're really well built. Solid engineering. Great power sources. Fantastic weapon systems. Thanks for the free samples, by the way. Our engineers had a field day reverse engineering them." Keith Var felt his confidence crack like ice under pressure. This was not how primitive species were supposed to behave. They were supposed to cower, beg, surrender, accept their fate with appropriate terror. They were not supposed to steal military technology and turn it against its creators while making jokes about it. You turned our own weapons against us?" Maya's grin turned positively predatory. "Oh, Keith. That's just the beginning." Keith Var's forearms began to tremble with rage. In his entire military career, spanning 47 years and 17 conquered worlds, no primitive had ever spoken to him with such casual disrespect. The audacity was beyond comprehension. The sheer arrogance of this tiny, soft-skinned creature was making his exoskeleton itch with fury. "You insignificant insect!" he roared, his voice amplifiers cranked to maximum. "I have crushed civilizations that mastered interstellar travel before your species discovered fire. I have reduced entire star systems to radioactive debris. You dare stand before me, a warlord of the hegemony, and mock our superiority?" Maya Torres examined her fingernails with theatrical boredom. "Keith, you're really getting worked up over this. Maybe you should take a breath. Oh wait, do you breathe? I honestly can't tell with all that armor." Vel Thark made a choking sound that might have been suppressed laughter or sheer terror. Several shock troopers exchanged glances that conveyed the universal military sentiment. This is not going according to plan. Keith Var took a threatening step forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the human female. "I will give you one final chance to show proper respect before I personally tear you apart with my bare claws." "Your bare claws?" Maya looked genuinely curious. "Are those the stubby little things poking out of your gauntlets? They look like they'd be really useful for, I don't know, opening packages. Scratching hard-to-reach itches." That did it. Keith Var's carefully maintained composure shattered like glass. With a bellow of pure rage, he lunged forward, intending to grab this insolent creature and demonstrate exactly why the hegemony ruled half the galaxy. His massive armored form moved with surprising speed, claws extended, ready to end this mockery once and for all. Maya did not retreat, did not dodge, did not even look particularly concerned. Instead, she stepped forward to meet his charge, ducked under his grasping arms with fluid grace, and delivered a perfectly executed uppercut that connected with the weak joint where his helmet met his neck armor. The sound was magnificent. A sharp crack echoed across the landing field like a gunshot, followed immediately by Keith Var's agonized shriek as his mandibles snapped with a wet crunching noise that made even his own soldiers wince. Green fluid leaked from his helmet's breathing apparatus. His attempts to roar came out as pathetic wheezes. But the physical damage was nothing compared to what happened next. Keith Var, warlord of the hegemony, conqueror of worlds, terror of 17 star systems, stumbled backward, clutching his shattered jaw and producing a series of high-pitched whimpering sounds that no creature of his supposed majesty should ever make in front of subordinates. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Vel Thark's datapad slipped from his nerveless fingers and clattered to the ground. The shock troopers, bred and trained to follow orders without question, stood frozen in complete bewilderment. Their supreme commander, the living embodiment of hegemony might, was making noises like a wounded pet and stumbling around like a drunk civilian. "Sir." Thark's voice came out as a squeak. "Sir, should we?" Keith Var tried to respond, but all that emerged was a wet gurgling sound punctuated by clicks from his broken mandibles. Maya dusted off her hands and adjusted her uniform jacket. "Well, that was disappointing. All that talk about tearing me apart, and you go down like a house of cards. I was really hoping for more of a challenge. The chain of command, so carefully maintained through decades of rigid military hierarchy, began to collapse in real time. The shock troopers looked to Thark for orders. Thark looked to the writhing Keithvar for guidance. Keithvar was too busy trying to keep his jaw attached to provide leadership. Ground team. Commander Thessak's frantic voice crackled over their communication system. What is happening down there? The Warlord's vital signs are showing severe trauma, and we are detecting weapon signatures all around your position. Vel Thark fumbled for his communicator, his voice cracking with panic. The human, the Warlord is. I think his jaw is broken. A long pause filled the comm channel. Did you just say a human broke the Warlord's jaw? Maya leaned closer to Vel Thark's communicator and spoke directly into it. This is Captain Torres. Yes, I broke your boss's jaw. He was being rude. Would you like to come down here and discuss this in person? Or should I come up there and break something of yours, too? The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard a pin drop on vacuum-sealed metal. The comm channel crackled back to life with Thessak's voice, now carrying a distinct edge of panic. Ground team, maintain position. We are sending reinforcements immediately. Maya Torres tilted her head and smiled that predatory smile again. Oh, please do. I was just getting warmed up. What happened next would later be studied in military academies across the galaxy as a perfect example of how rigid tactical doctrine could be completely dismantled by creative chaos. The hegemony had spent centuries perfecting their conquest protocols, refining them into a precise art form that had never failed. Every variable had been calculated. Every contingency planned for. Every possible resistance scenario war-gamed to exhaustion. They had never encountered humans before. Maya keyed her comm unit. Torres to Bravo team. Time to show our guests what American ingenuity looks like. The response came from multiple directions at once. Lieutenant Jake Morrison's voice crackled through first. I copy that, Captain. Operation Redneck Engineering is a go. What followed was a sound that would haunt Vel Thark's nightmares for years to come. The roar of modified human vehicles approaching at high speed, accompanied by what could only be described as enthusiastic whooping. 3 pickup trucks crested the hill overlooking the landing field. But these were not ordinary vehicles. The humans had somehow mounted stolen hegemony energy weapons onto truck beds, creating mobile weapons platforms that defied every principle of proper military engineering. Worse, they had painted flames on the sides and added decorative elements that served no tactical purpose whatsoever. Sweet Mother of the Void, Vel Thark whispered. Are those energy cannons mounted on primitive transport vehicles? Maya nodded approvingly as the trucks roared onto the field, kicking up clouds of dust and playing what sounded like aggressive music at volumes that probably violated several galactic noise ordinances. Jake's always been creative. Wait until you see what Commander Singh came up with. As if summoned by her words, the sky above them filled with a sound that made Keithvar's broken jaw clench in fresh agony. Human aircraft, primitive by hegemony standards, moved in patterns that made no tactical sense. They swooped and weaved like insects, completely ignoring proper formation flying while somehow managing to coordinate their attacks with terrifying effectiveness. Commander Zara Singh's voice joined the chaos over the comms. We've got visual on 3 incoming hegemony dropships. Permission to demonstrate why you don't mess with the Navy. Granted, Maya replied. Show them what happens when they think inside the box and we think outside it. The human aircraft suddenly split into impossible formations, each one moving independently while somehow maintaining perfect coordination. It was like watching a school of fish, if fish carried weapons and had a collective death wish. Thark frantically tried to coordinate a response. All units, standard defensive formation Gamma. Establish overlapping fields of fire. His orders were cut short as one of the approaching hegemony dropships suddenly lurched to one side, its engines sputtering. The human aircraft had not fired on it. Instead, they had somehow used their primitive technology to jam the sophisticated navigation systems, causing the dropship to pilot itself into a hillside with spectacular results. How? Vel Thark demanded. How are they interfering with our systems? Maya shrugged. Your technology is really sophisticated, Vel. Super advanced. Very impressive. But you know what? Sometimes the most sophisticated lock in the galaxy can be opened with a really big hammer. The second dropship managed to land, disgorging 24 additional shock troopers who immediately formed a textbook defensive perimeter. Perfect spacing. Overlapping fields of fire. Maximum tactical efficiency. It was a thing of beauty from a military perspective. Then Jake Morrison's trucks hit them from 3 directions at once, completely ignoring the carefully planned kill zones and attacking from angles that no rational military force would consider viable. The shock troopers, trained to respond to logical tactical situations, found themselves trying to target vehicles that should have been destroyed but somehow kept moving, kept firing, and kept playing that infernal music. "This is not possible," one of the shock trooper sergeants screamed over the comm. "They are attacking through their own crossfire. They should be hitting each other." Maya listened to the chaos with obvious satisfaction. "That assumes we care about hitting each other. Jake, are you okay over there?" Morrison's voice came back cheerful despite the sound of energy weapons firing around him. "Just peachy, Captain. Though I think Kowalski might have singed his eyebrows again." "I'm fine," came another voice. "It's just hair. It'll grow back." The third dropship never made it to the ground. Commander Singh's aircraft had somehow used their primitive missiles to create a debris field that the sophisticated hegemony targeting systems could not navigate around. The dropship's computer, faced with obstacles that did not match its programming parameters, simply shut down and crashed. Thark watched his carefully planned reinforcement operation collapse into complete chaos. His forces were not losing because they were outgunned or outmaneuvered in any conventional sense. They were losing because the humans refused to fight conventionally at all. "In retreat!" he finally screamed into his communicator. "All units, fall back to the ships. This is not how warfare is supposed to work." Maya Torres walked over to where Keithvar was still trying to reattach his jaw and patted him on his armored shoulder with mock sympathy. "Keith, buddy, I hate to break it to you, but nobody told us there were rules." The Great Hegemony Conquest Force, veterans of 17 successful campaigns, began their retreat from a primitive planet whose inhabitants had just rewritten the book on asymmetrical warfare while laughing the entire time. 6 hours later, Warlord Keithvar sat in his flagship's medical bay, his jaw wired shut and his pride in even worse condition. The ship's medical officer, a competent but nervous creature named Dr. Kithmau, finished applying the final bandages while carefully avoiding eye contact with his humiliated commander. Through the medical bay's viewport, Keithvar could see the rest of his mighty conquest fleet limping away from Earth at maximum speed. 3 dropships destroyed. 2 frigates damaged by what the humans had cheerfully called fishing nets with rockets attached. And his personal reputation as an unstoppable force reduced to cosmic rubble. All by creatures who had not even achieved faster-than-light travel. Vel Thark entered the medical bay carrying a datapad and wearing the expression of someone who had spent the last several hours questioning everything he thought he knew about the universe. "My lord, I have completed the after-action report, but I am not sure Command will believe it." Keithvar attempted to speak, discovered that wired jaws made communication difficult, and gestured impatiently for his sub-commander to continue. The humans achieved complete tactical victory using what can only be described as organized chaos, Vel Thark read from his report. They demonstrated technological adaptation capabilities far exceeding any species in our databases. More disturbing, they showed no fear of death, injury, or tactical disadvantage. In fact, they appeared to enjoy the combat situation. The Warlord's eyes narrowed. Enjoyed it? What kind of species enjoyed being attacked by superior forces? Vel Thark continued, his voice growing more confused with each sentence. Analysis of their behavior patterns suggests that humans are not actually a primitive species. They are apex predators disguised as prey animals. Their apparent technological limitations appear to be a result of internal competition rather than intellectual capacity. Dr. Kithmau looked up from his instruments. That would explain the physiological readings we detected. Human stress hormones do not spike during combat the way most species do. Instead, they appear to enter a state similar to what we observe in Rathka hunting packs. Keithvar's blood ran cold. Rathka were nightmare creatures from the galactic rim, Pack hunters so efficient that the hegemony had simply marked their systems as off-limits rather than attempt conquest. The idea that humans might be similar was terrifying. "There is more, my lord," Velthark said reluctantly. "We intercepted human communications during the engagement. They were not coordinating tactics in any conventional sense. They were making jokes, laughing. Apparently, they found our retreat amusing." Through his broken jaw, Keithvar managed to produce a sound that might have been a question. "Yes, sir. Captain Torres specifically requested that we deliver a message to Hegemony Command." Velthark swallowed hard. She said, and I quote, "Tell your bosses that Earth is closed to tourists. But if they want to come back and play again, we will be happy to show them some new tricks we have been working on." The medical bay fell silent, except for the hum of life support systems and the distant sound of damaged engines straining to carry them away from Earth as quickly as possible. Dr. Kithmau cleared his throat nervously. "My lord, there is one more thing. During my analysis of the human female's combat effectiveness, I discovered something interesting about their species' evolution." Keithvar gestured for him to continue. "They evolved as persistence hunters, sir. They do not take down prey through overwhelming force or superior speed. They exhaust it, by refusing to stop, by adapting to every defense, by learning from every encounter until their target simply cannot continue." The doctor paused. "Sir, I believe we just became their prey." Velthark stared out the viewport at the blue marble shrinking behind them. What kind of species turns invasion into entertainment? What kind of creatures laugh while being attacked by superior forces? The answer came from an unexpected source. "Commander," Commander Thesak's voice crackled over the intercom from the bridge. "Sir, we are receiving another transmission from the planet's surface. It appears to be music, sir. They are playing music at us." The sound that filtered through the ship's communication system was unlike anything in hegemony databases. Energetic, defiant, with lyrics that seemed to celebrate resistance against impossible odds. The humans were serenading their retreat with what could only be described as victory songs. Keithvar finally understood what they had encountered. Not a primitive species to be conquered, but apex predators who had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting each other because nothing else on their planet provided adequate challenge. They had not been divided by weakness. They had been divided by excess strength. And now, for the first time in their history, someone had given them a common enemy. The hegemony had not attempted to conquer Earth. They had accidentally united it. As his flagship limped toward the edge of the solar system, Keithvar began composing a very different message to Hegemony Command than the victory dispatch he had originally planned. This one would carry a single urgent recommendation. Place the Sol system on the permanent off-limits list. Some prey, he had learned, was simply too dangerous to hunt. But in the darkness between stars, another ship was watching. Not Hegemony. Something else. Something that had observed the entire engagement with growing interest. A deep voice spoke into the void. "Fascinating. The hegemony retreated from primitives. These humans, they may be exactly what we have been looking for." The ship turned toward Earth. Its engines flared. The story was far from over. 3 days after the hegemony's humiliating retreat, Captain Maya Torres stood on the same landing field, watching engineers dismantle the captured alien technology. The broken jaw of Warlord Keithvar had become an overnight sensation across every corner of Earth. Memes flooded the networks. News anchors debated the geopolitical implications. Children dressed as Maya for Halloween. She hated every second of it. "You're brooding again," said Lieutenant Jake Morrison, walking up beside her with 2 cups of coffee. "That's my job. I'm the brooding one." Maya took the coffee. "I'm not brooding. I'm thinking. Dangerous habit. What about?" She gestured toward the sky. "About what comes next." Keithvar was arrogant and stupid. But whoever sent him isn't. The hegemony has conquered 17 civilizations. They didn't get that far by being idiots. They got that far by learning. So they'll learn from this. Come back smarter. Exactly. Jake sipped his coffee. "Then we'd better get smarter faster." Commander Zara Singh jogged over from the makeshift command tent, her face unreadable. "Captain, you need to see this." Long-range sensors picked up something an hour ago. We thought it was debris from the battle, but... But what? It's not debris. It's a ship. Different design from the hegemony. Smaller. Faster. And it's not running away. It's coming toward us. Maya set down her coffee. How long until it arrives? At current speed, 12 hours. What's its classification? Military. Scout. Diplomatic. Zara shook her head. That's the problem. It doesn't match any profile in our databases. Not hegemony. Not anything we've seen before. But it's broadcasting on a frequency we can translate. What's it saying? Zara's jaw tightened. It says, "We saw what you did to the hegemony. We want to talk." The command tent was crowded within the hour. Every available intelligence officer, military strategist, and linguist had been pulled in. Screens displayed the unknown ship's trajectory, a slow, deliberate approach that seemed almost casual. "Could be a trick," said General Marcus Webb, a weathered veteran who had seen every conflict of the last 30 years. "Lure us into complacency, then strike." "Could be," Maya agreed. But the hegemony didn't need tricks. They had overwhelming force. Whoever this is, they're not trying to intimidate us. They're trying to communicate. Since when do aliens communicate? Since we broke one's jaw and sent his fleet running. The comm officer raised a hand. "Captain, we're receiving a new transmission. Audio only. Play it." The voice that emerged was deep, measured, and surprisingly gentle, a stark contrast to Keithvar's arrogant bark. "Captain Maya Torres. My name is Ambassador Velkan of the United Free Worlds. I come in peace. I come with warning. And I come because you are the first species in 1,000 years to make the hegemony run." A pause. "The hegemony will return. Not in weeks. Not in months. But they will return. And when they do, they will bring everything they have. You need allies. You need technology. You need time." Another pause. "I can give you all three. But you must trust me. And trust is earned." The transmission ended. The tent fell silent. General Webb broke the quiet. "It's a trap." "Probably," Maya said. "But what if it's not?" She stood up, walked to the tent's opening, and looked at the sky. Somewhere up there, a ship was approaching with promises of alliance and warnings of doom. Somewhere beyond that, the hegemony was licking its wounds and planning revenge. And somewhere inside her, a voice whispered that the real conflict had not yet begun. "Open a channel," she said finally. "Tell Ambassador Velkan that Captain Torres will meet with him. One ship. One location. Neutral ground. And if he refuses—" Maya smiled, that predatory smile that had broken an alien warlord's composure. "Then we'll know he was lying. And we'll prepare accordingly." The channel opened. The response came within seconds. "Agreed. I will transmit coordinates. Captain Torres, thank you for listening. Most species don't. That is why most species fall." The transmission ended. The coordinates appeared on screen, a remote stretch of ocean, far from any population center. Neutral ground. Maya turned to her team. "Jake, you're with me. Zara, you have tactical command while I'm gone. If anything goes wrong—" "It won't," Zara said. "You don't know that." "No. But I know you." Maya grabbed her jacket and walked toward the waiting shuttle. Behind her, the sky was darkening. Ahead, something waited that would change everything, or end everything. She climbed aboard. The shuttle lifted off. Somewhere above, Ambassador Velkan watched her approach and wondered if he had finally found what the free worlds had been searching for across 1,000 years of war. A species that could fight. A species that could win. A species that might, just might, help them end the hegemony forever. The shuttle rose toward the stars. The real game was about to begin. The meeting took place on a converted oil platform in the middle of the Atlantic. Neutral ground, just as Maya had requested. Her shuttle touched down at dawn, the rising sun painting the metal deck in shades of gold and blood. Ambassador Velkan was already there. He stood waiting near the platform's edge, his form taller than a human but somehow less imposing than Keithvar's armored bulk. Where the Warlord had been all sharp angles and aggressive posturing, Velkan was smooth, almost elegant, skin the color of deep space, eyes that held the light of distant stars. "Captain Torres," he said, inclining his head. "Thank you for coming. You said you had warnings. Allies. Technology." Maya crossed her arms. "I'm listening." Velkan gestured toward the horizon. "The hegemony has ruled this quadrant for 4,000 years. Not because they are strong, though they are, but because no one has ever stood against them and won. Until you. We broke one ship. One warlord's jaw. That's not winning a war. No. But it is a beginning." He turned to face her directly. "The United Free Worlds has been fighting the hegemony in secret for centuries. We have stolen their technology, liberated their conquered species, built an alliance of over 40 worlds. But we have never been able to defeat them openly. Their military might is too great. Their reach too vast. Until now. Until now." Velkan's eyes gleamed. "You did something we never could. You made them afraid." Keithvar's fleet did not retreat because they were outgunned. They retreated because their warlord was humiliated in front of his own troops. Because their invincible image was shattered. Because for the first time in 4,000 years, the hegemony faced something they could not intimidate. Maya was quiet for a long moment. The wind whipped across the platform, carrying salt spray and the distant cry of seabirds. "What are you asking, Ambassador?" "I am asking for an alliance. Your world. Our worlds. Together, we can build something the hegemony cannot defeat. A coalition of free species. A united front. We have the technology you need. You have the fighting spirit we lack. It is a perfect marriage. And if I say no?" Velkan's expression did not change. "Then the hegemony will return in 1 year. Perhaps 2. They will bring 500 ships. 1,000. They will not make the same mistakes twice. And Earth will burn." Maya felt the weight of the decision pressing against her chest. She thought about the soldiers who had died in the first battle. The families who had watched the sky fill with alien warships. The children who had asked their parents if the monsters were coming back. "One condition," she said finally. "Name it. No secrets. No hidden agendas. If we do this, we do it together, as equals. The free worlds share everything they have with us, and we share everything we have with them. No holding back." Velkan extended his hand, a gesture he had clearly learned from studying human customs. "Agreed." Maya shook it. The deal was sealed. 1 year later, the hegemony returned. 500 ships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, their weapons charged, their shields raised, their commanders eager to avenge the humiliation of Keithvar's defeat. They found Earth waiting. Not alone. Not primitive. Not afraid. The combined fleet of the United Free Worlds and Earth's newly christened Defense Force met them in the dark between Mars and Jupiter. 400 ships of every design imaginable, stolen hegemony tech, free worlds innovation, and the unmistakable touch of human engineering, weapons mounted on unexpected platforms, tactical formations that made no logical sense, and that same aggressive music blasting across every frequency. At the head of the fleet flew the Torres, a cruiser built around the captured technology from Keithvar's abandoned dropships. Its captain sat in the command chair, her jaw set, her eyes cold. "Open a channel," Maya ordered. The hegemony commander's face appeared on the screen, younger than Keithvar, more arrogant, with scars across his exoskeleton that spoke of battles won. "Captain Torres," he sneered. "We have heard of you. The primitive who got lucky. Today, luck runs out." Maya leaned forward. "You want to know the difference between you and us, Commander? You conquer because you want to own. We fight because we want to be free. There is nothing more dangerous in the galaxy than someone who has nothing left to lose." She cut the channel. All ships, open fire. The battle that followed lasted 3 days. Ships died on both sides. Heroes were made. Legends were born. But in the end, the hegemony fleet broke, not because they were outmatched, but because they could not understand their enemy. Every time they adapted, the humans changed. Every time they pushed forward, the free worlds pulled them into traps. And when the last hegemony ship fled toward the edge of the system, its commander screaming about dishonorable tactics and unfair advantages, Maya Torres sat back in her chair and allowed herself a single small smile. "Keithvar was right about one thing," she said to Jake, who stood beside her with a bandage wrapped around his head and a grin on his face. "What's that?" 5 years after the battle that broke the hegemony's grip on the galaxy, Captain Maya Torres stood on a hill overlooking Peterson Space Force Base. The landing field where she had shattered Keithvar's jaw was now a museum. School children walked past the preserved subjugator, learning about the day Earth stopped being prey and became something else entirely. "They're still telling that story," said Jake Morrison, now a grizzled colonel, walking up beside her. "The jaw punch. They've got it in history books, video games, even a really bad action movie." "I know. My mother made me watch it with her. Twice." Jake laughed. "Could be worse. Could be a musical." Behind them, the sound of engines rumbled. Not alien engines, human engines, built from the technology the free worlds had shared. Earth now had a fleet of over 200 ships. Not the largest in the galaxy, but perhaps the most feared. "Velkin sends his regards," Jake said, handing her a datapad. "The free worlds just liberated another 12 systems. Hegemony is in full retreat. They're calling it the Great Unraveling." Maya scanned the report. Keithvar, she read, had been stripped of his rank and exiled to a remote outpost. His jaw had never healed properly. Human bone, it turned out, did not mix well with alien reconstruction techniques. He reportedly spent his days staring at the stars and muttering about the one who punched me. "Good. The Council wants you to address them," Jake continued. "They're talking about a new position. Supreme Commander of Allied Forces. You'd be the first human to hold the rank." Maya was quiet for a long moment. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Somewhere above, the Torres was preparing for its next mission, a deep space patrol to the edge of former hegemony territory. "Tell them no," she said finally. Jake blinked. "No. I'm a captain, Jake. That's what I am. That's what I want to be. Give the fancy titles to someone who wants them. I'd rather be on a ship." He studied her face, looking for doubt, and found none. "You know they're going to name something after you anyway. A building. A ship. Maybe a planet. If they name a planet after me, I'm retiring." "You'll never retire." Maya smiled, that same predatory smile that had once made an alien warlord hesitate. "No, I won't." She turned and walked down the hill, toward the waiting shuttle that would take her back to the Torres. Behind her, the museum glowed in the fading light. Inside, a plaque read, "On this field, Captain Maya Torres proved that the size of the enemy does not matter. Only the size of the courage." She had never liked that plaque. Too dramatic. Too polished. The truth was simpler. She had been angry and tired and very, very tired of aliens who thought they owned the galaxy. The shuttle lifted off. The stars opened before her. Somewhere out there, the hegemony was crumbling. Somewhere out there, new threats were gathering, species that had watched the fall of the old empire and wondered if they might take its place. The war was not over. It would never be over. But for tonight, the sky was clear. The ship was steady. And Captain Maya Torres, the woman who broke an alien warlord's jaw with one perfect uppercut, was exactly where she belonged. In the dark between stars. Watching. Waiting. Ready. The end. We're not primitive. We're predators. They just forgot what happens when you corner a predator. She looked out at the stars, the same stars that had once held only threats and darkness. Now they held something else. Hope. The war was not over. The hegemony still ruled half the galaxy. There would be more battles, more losses, more hard choices. But Earth was no longer alone. And that, more than any weapon, any ship, any alliance, was how you won a war. One broken jaw at a time. The end.